And don't forget, I always tell you about this. It's great for pain, shoulder, back, neck, ankles, elbows, knees, you name it. Also, I'm using it for my hair recovery, and this is the hat. There you go. You see red lights, baby, right there. Only 15 minutes a day, and you go to redrecover.com and check it out also. So just in case, if you're looking to grow some of that hair back, if it hasn't been dead for 10 or 15 years, okay, that may not be able to be revised. I just revived, that is. So be careful there, just so you'll know. But if it's recent, you might be able to save it there. Go to redrecover.com. All right, Matt, how you feeling, baby? You feeling good?
I'm feeling good. Ready to talk football.
Well, kind of. So if you got 20 of the lawsuits settled, there's 4 more, and then there's 2 other ones. I'm trying to follow this whole thing. If you've settled some, that might be a good thing. Still doesn't really show well in the court of public opinion, but you look at everything else that's still lingering. How does the NFL attack this problem? In this last couple of days, we've heard about maybe a significant suspension coming. I don't know if you've heard what it could be.
I haven't, but I would say this. Look, I've seen a lot of headlines over the last 24 hours at various different outlets that have been like, well, he's only got 4 to go. Well, yeah, he still has 4 women who are alleging sexual assault and or misconduct. Like, that's still a lot. Is it 24? No, but 4 is still more than enough for him not to step on a football field this year. Look, for him, it clears up a good chunk of the civil suits. It takes away, 20 of those cases. Now they don't have to be adjudicated. They've been settled. Tony Busby, who is the lawyer for all these plaintiffs against Watson, in a statement said that the number won't be disclosed. Usually that number ends up leaking at some point. We'll end up seeing it. It was previously reported that when there were 22 civil suits, Watson had an agreement with 18 of these women for $100,000 a piece, and then he decided not to settle one if he couldn't settle them all. Now, maybe he went back and offered that $100,000 again and got it taken care of. Maybe it was more. We don't know. But in the end, I don't think it's going to impact what he gets suspended for by the NFL. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's still facing 4 very serious allegations. He still had to just settle 20 civil suits. I don't think the league is going to all of a sudden take this favorable light because of what happened yesterday.
Well, they should not take a favorable light. Now, the other thing is when Busby was talking, and he went out of his way to bring up Ashley Solis, who ignited this whole thing and is currently still one of the 4. Yes. So I am wondering how much more deeper is that case? How much more of a problem is that case? And what is she demanding overall? Because obviously, if you settle 20 out of the 24, there's got to be a bigger problem with those other 4, including Solis, who he went out of the way to mention several times. And I just almost get the feeling like there's more to this Solis thing, and that's kind of why he did that, in a way of kind of planting that seed. Did you get that feeling too, or am I just being cynical like I normally am?
No, I mean, it's possible. Look, Ashley Solis has been very public compared to the other plaintiffs about how affected she was by what she alleges happened with Deshaun Watson. And listen, this is something where $100,000. Now, again, I don't know if that's what they ended up settling for, but it was reported that previously all but 4 of the women, when there were 22 suits, had agreed to $100,000. If that's what this figure was, that is a life-changing amount of money for most people. $100,000, pay off your mortgage, or maybe if you don't have a house, buy one. Whatever the case, I mean, that's a lot of money.
Right.
For 4 women to say, no, I'm good. I'm not going to take whatever the settlement is. I'm not going to take that. I'm going to pursue this. They obviously have the courage of their convictions. I mean, they clearly feel like, no, I'm going to go after you beyond just getting a monetary settlement. Now, of course, in a civil suit, eventually it will be a monetary settlement. But you don't know what anybody's motivations are. But what I mean by that is it might be, hey, look, I'm not going to feel like I got bought off here. Like we're going to go to the mat. Everything's going to be out in public. I'm not going to be tied to a non-disclosure agreement. But I think these four women, and as you mentioned, Ashley Solis is one of them. They apparently were unwilling to settle, and so he's going to have to, it looks like, adjudicate these, and that could get very messy for him.
Yeah, no, that's why. And the other thing is, we still have the 25 and 26 that
Right.
are also coming,
Right.
and we don't know how many more are coming after that. Okay, so now we've got that mess. And now we've got the league trying to get the Brian Flores case in arbitration and in private arbitration, obviously away from everybody, so it doesn't go in public. So you've got that Brian Flores case, which obviously ties in Stephen Ross, and then you've got the stuff going on with in Washington where Snyder doesn't want to, go before the oversight committee and all that stuff. So now, and they're challenging him and all that stuff. The league right now is in the middle of a crap storm in itself, because they've got to, you could tell, Matt, that they're going head over heels to try to protect these owners. Yep. Because they know that is going to lead down a Pandora's box that'll probably open up other crap for them that they just don't want to go public. So my question to you is, are they going to be able to keep all this stuff under wraps, whatever happened with Ross and obviously all the crap that's gone on with Snyder?
To start with Flores, I think they might be able to. I don't have any inside information on that other than to say, look, I mean, Brian Flores obviously fired from Miami this year, really put forth some serious allegations, essentially trying to lose games. I don't know how that ends up. That's a hard thing to prove unless you've got just ironclad evidence. And so far we have not seen that. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Doesn't mean it did happen, but it's just hard to prove it. It's hard to prove something like that. I don't know that will end up going on and on and on. I feel like at some point, Brian Flores is also employed by the Pittsburgh Steelers right now as an assistant defensive coach. No matter how strongly you believe what you believe, and I think Brian Flores clearly has conviction, at some point, do you just say, look, I just want to get on with my life? Maybe not. We're going to find out. But I think the NFL's got a better shot with that one than with Snyder. This feels with the oversight committee,
because the government's involved, right?
Yeah, like Pandora's box already has been opened at this point. Like the United States government is now looking into Daniel Snyder in a way that has not previously happened with him. And it's never a good sign when you're unwilling to cooperate with the government. I mean, why? Why won't you cooperate? Now you're having all these things come out as to whether or not, what he's settled in the past with different female employees. Look, Daniel Snyder, I don't think anybody's putting him up for a humanitarian award based off of his 20 years in the league. Okay, I think that's a safe commentary. That being said, I have people ask me all the time, well, why is he still an owner? Well, because other owners take up for him, because if one owner can be thrown out for something, then it becomes a lot easier to throw other owners out for other things. Jerry Richardson of the Panthers relinquished his franchise, but he was an elderly man who was just about ready to give up the franchise anyway. It was a lot easier to do that and bring in David Tepper. Now, I will add this, though, and I think this is interesting. The Broncos, not that long ago, a week or two ago, sold for over $4 billion. It was the most money we've ever seen a North American franchise sell for. How much now are NFL owners looking at that price tag and going, I wonder what you get for Washington? Because if you get over $4 billion for Denver, what would Washington get? Well, Washington, if you got 4.8, you got 5. All of a sudden, all their franchises are worth more now, too. And the last point was Snyder. The NFL will put up with a lot of stuff, a lot of heinous stuff, especially if you're an owner. One thing they won't put up with is you skirting off money off the top, skimming money off the top. If they find out that he saved 8 cents that was due to another owner, he'll be gone tonight. Okay, I mean, they will deal with everything in the world But if you screw somebody out of a nickel in the NFL, that will be the end of you being an owner. So he's in more hot water, I think, than he's ever been from a governmental standpoint and from a league standpoint.
So the Action Network put out that there's the least amount of actions being placed on Houston and the Jags, which is kind of expected.
Right.
But the third team is the Patriots. And, you know, it's kind of, we're having fun now here in Miami where we're saying, is Tyreek Hill going to miss Pat Mahomes more, or is Pat Mahomes going to miss Tyreek Hill more, and all that stuff, and that conversation's going on? Well, the one that's already like etched in stone, it's Bill Belichick has missed Tom Brady more than Tom Brady has missed Bill Belichick, right? I mean, that's the given, right? In all of this, the Belichick will always be what he is, whether it's the GOAT or one of the greatest, one of the 2 or 3 greatest, whatever. It's not going to go away. But is the shine going to start falling off a little bit, saying, yeah, you were great, just like Don Shula was great, just like Tom Landry was great, just like Chuck Noll was great. But it gets to a point where your time has come. So you just wonder, this year he didn't hire an offensive coordinator. Now he's doing it all himself too, on top of all of that. And if this team doesn't get back to being what it was in the past, not necessarily a Super Bowl contender, but at least some kind of a contender, does the shine start to fall off? And does Robert Kraft, who loves Brady, say, yeah, I think it's time to turn the page here also with Belichick?
I think Kraft will let Belichick kind of leave when he wants to leave. But I do think, look, I don't think historically, like when you look back on Belichick, I don't think what happens in the next couple of years matters, right? Like you mentioned Chuck Noll, which is an apt comparison. Noll won all of his titles in the 70s. He coached into the 90s. Like nobody's like, well, in 1986, he really let us down. Like he won 4 Super Bowls. He made his mark.
Tom Landry did too. Same thing.
Exactly right. And Tom Landry, by the end of that, it was a disaster in Dallas. I mean, but
Don Shula, it was a disaster towards the end too, dude. I mean,
Don Shula, as great as he was, he coached the last 20 some odd years of Miami, not win the title, but he was great. So I don't think historically it affects Belichick, but I will say this: I wrote a column, my Stack in the Box column, in Fanside last Monday, I believe it was. And I wrote, I think we've seen the end of the Patriots. Like, for 20 years, we've been talking about, well, is this the year? Is this the year? And it was always premature. And me personally, I always stayed away from that because I always feel like if you have the coach and the quarterback, you're good. Well, they had the coach, they had the quarterback, they'll be fine. It's the same reason I think Kansas City's going to win 13 games this year. But I look at New England, they don't have the quarterback anymore. Mac Jones is fine. He's not bad. He's going to get better. He's young, but he's not Brady. He's not a top 10, 12 quarterback in the league. And I look at their weaponry. Who's the guy? I mean, Devontae Parker? I mean,
dude, he's doing the same shit he did to Brady without Brady.
Right.
But you can get away with it when you have Brady. You can't get away with that shit when you have Mac Jones, dude. It's like,
well, and look, everybody gets it so twisted with Brady. Like, well, he left because he hated Belichick. He left because they had nobody to throw the ball to. He left because he knew it was over in New England. They weren't going to beat Buffalo, who was up and coming. They weren't going to beat Kansas City. They were going to win. They weren't going to beat those teams. That was it. Like, look,
he had the best combination of tight ends we've ever seen in our lives.
And then
he had Randy Moss and Wes Welker, and he had a stretch where he had some amazing weapons, and then all of us. And you got to remember, he won his first title with Troy Brown and Jermaine Wiggins, David Patton and Corey Dillon, and you're like, holy shit, it's like Montana's first with Cooper, Freddie Solomon.
Yep.
It wasn't Rice and Taylor, and that was the second title. You know what I mean? But that's what those greats can do. They can elevate others, and as long as you have a line and stuff like that, they can elevate the skill position guys. But it becomes a pain in the ass if you have to do it every year. So Bill Walsh didn't give Joe Montana, Freddie Solomon every year. He gave him Rice and Taylor and other guys. Belichick, dude, he has only given this guy a few really good weapons throughout his stretch. More often than not, he was throwing the Oompa Loompas. It was a pain in the ass.
They're not. Look, they're to a point right now. Their weapons, their group of receiving weapons. It's a bottom 5 group in the NFL. It's not good. I mean, who is their number 1 receiver right now? Is it Devontae Parker? It's probably Devontae Parker. Maybe it's Jacoby Myers. I mean, those guys on a lot of teams are 3rd and 4th options. I mean, that's what they are. That's what they should be. You know, Parker, everybody in Miami is familiar with him. I mean, look, talented guy, but has never really been able to put it together outside of one season. They drafted
always injured. Always injured.
Right,
That's his
always
problem.
hurt. Tyquan Thornton, you know, we'll see. He's a 2nd-round rookie. N'Keal Harry was a 1st-round pick. Everybody thought was going to be great. N'Keal Harry's been terrible. And let's call it what it is.
By the way, if it's a Patriot draft pick at wide receiver,
right, it's not good.
You have no hope, anyways, for any Patriot draft pick.
The last time they took a successful receiver in the draft, it was Edelman, who was a quarterback in college. So I mean, that's where you are. But they have the 2 tight ends in Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, who they paid a fortune to. Who have the 2nd and 4th highest cap hits on the team this year. Those guys combined did not go for 1,000 yards last season. So it's just, look, New England, right? If you looked at the AFC today and said, who is New England definitively better than? The only teams I would say they are definitively better than are Houston, Jacksonville, and the Jets. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the entire list.
Maybe
Carolina. And by the way, if Zach Wilson's
Carolina because they don't have a quarterback.
Well, I'm just talking AFC.
Oh, okay.
Just in the AFC.
Okay, yes.
Jacksonville, Houston. Yeah. I mean, they're in the AFC West. They're 5th place. If they're in the AFC North, they're fighting with Pittsburgh for 4th. Like, that's what they are at this point. They're not.
I think the Dolphins have a shot at sweeping them this year, actually.
They could.
By the way, Tua's undefeated against Belichick. I don't know if
the Dolphins have a hex on them. The Dolphins have beaten them forever. I don't know what it is. Look, I always joke.
Divisional games, bro. That's just the way it is. You can't explain divisional games at times. That happens all the time within divisions. It's
true. I always laugh because Miami, my dad, for full disclosure, is a diehard Kansas City Chiefs fan. I always joke with him that you guys won the Super Bowl in a large way because of Ryan Fitzpatrick, who went up to New England and beat them in Week 17 in a game that meant nothing for Miami, but knocked New England out of a bye. And, and that was the last game Brady, they go and they lose next week to Tennessee. The Dolphins have beaten up on New England forever. They had that crazy game a few years ago, that miracle in Miami. I mean, they've given Belichick fits for years. No matter who the coach is, who the quarterback is, it's been a house of horrors for them.
Yeah. It's that part's been, but that's about the only thing that's been half decent for us down here. That at least they've been somewhat competitive with the Patriots in the past. Yeah. All right, so who's the? I give you an unfair question because obviously we haven't seen the preseason, the training camp, and we don't know who survives all of that health-wise, because it's not an excuse. Those are facts. Sometimes injuries just crush your effing season. It is what it is. But who's the under-the-radar team for you this year that you're looking at and you're going, man, I really like what they're doing. They could end up making some noise in the playoffs. Who's that under-the-radar team right now for you?
So I'll try to give one each conference. I think in the AFC, and I don't know if this qualifies, and it's actually funny because they're the team last year that got crushed by injuries. I feel like a lot of people just aren't talking about Baltimore.
Okay.
Baltimore's really good. Now, the caveat being in the playoffs, they have struggled to win in the playoffs because they do not throw the ball well.
Well, he can't throw the ball.
In the regular season, I can see that team winning 12, 13 games. I mean, they're very good defensively. They're very well coached. They'll run the hell out of the ball. Mark Andrews will have 1,200 yards. If Lamar's healthy, he's a pain in the rear end to deal with. I feel like when you talk about the AFC, a lot of people, it's Buffalo, it's Kansas City, it's Cincinnati, and then it veers off into like the Chargers and the Broncos, and how are the Dolphins going to be with all their additions? The Ravens get lost. They were 7-2 last year, going actually into Miami, and then Miami cover zero, blitz the hell out of them the entire night. And that changed their entire season. But nobody was injured more last year than Baltimore. I mean, the Ravens were missing everybody, and they still almost made the playoffs. So I think they're overlooked. The other team I would throw out there, who maybe is a little bit more overlooked, I think Minnesota could be interesting in the NFC. Look, they have a new coach in Kevin O'Connell. Their offense should be less archaic than it was under Zimmer, and they have talent. Cook,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
Thielen, and Jefferson,
But
and say what
you
you
know
want
what my
about
problem
Cousins.
is with both of those picks? The
Sure, what do you got?
passer. The passer is my problem with both of those picks because the teams are good enough. And by the way, describing Baltimore, you were describing my Florida Panthers. Like amazing in the regular season, great offense. And then, hey, by the way, it gets physical in the playoffs and they got punched in the mouth and got sent home.
No,
And in a way, you know, for the Ravens and the Vikings, it's the quarterback that's got to show me that he can put the team over the
that's
top.
fair.
And that's what I and Cousins is actually a much better passer, but unlike he and Garoppolo have that thing where they need to make that pass that puts them over the hump. Like, yeah, I'm that guy. And Lamar, forget about it. Lamar gets to the playoffs and it's like, all right, let's shut the run down and let's see if the kid can beat us with his arm. And that's the problem. And by the way, I think the Dolphins kind of put out the blueprint on how to just attack the kid too. That was also, I think that was a bad thing for him also.
I also agree with Miami, what they did last year. I mean, the Dolphins, I can't remember a game where a team just literally lined up defensively in the same formation on every day and said, I don't care. You beat us because we're bringing 7 guys every play. We're going to bring 7 guys. We're not going to let you run. And we're going to relentlessly go after you. And that is, not to take a shot at my own pick, but I will say that is the one thing with Baltimore that scares me. Their receiving room is brutal. Like that team, their receivers. Now, look, again, in the regular season, I think they'll just overwhelm teams with the way they run the ball and how good they're defensively.
Right.
But in January,
and it's a pain in the ass to prepare for every week.
It's hard. It's
because the teams don't have anybody to play Lamar during the week. It's hard, dude.
It's so different. And a lot of times in the regular season, look, teams want to win every game. But like, for an example, the Bills play them this year. The Bills are going to certainly try to win in game plan for them, but they're not going to show every single thing they can do in week 4. They're not going to do that. Whereas in the playoffs, they will. They will do every single thing they can possibly do. And in the playoffs, it's a lot about, well, we're going to eliminate the 1 or 2 things you do best. And you have to have a left hand to be able to beat us. With Baltimore, that is always my fear with them in the postseason, is that it becomes, okay, we're gonna stack the box and we're going to bracket Andrews, beat us. And I do think you are going to see teams this year take a page out of what Flores and the Dolphins did in that game and say, look, your best receiver is Rashad Bateman. Like, we're going to get up on the line, press the hell out of you, and blitz 6, 7 guys, and you're just going to have to beat it. Right. I do think they'll contend in the AFC North with Cincinnati, but I do think come playoff time, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, and maybe Herbert if they get there, like Russell Wilson, that's a significant advantage. Those guys can beat you any way from the pocket or even on a scramble. The Ravens haven't proven they can do that in the passing game.
Tell them about Stacking the Box there at Fansided, my brother.
Absolutely. Every Tuesday at noon Eastern time, we are live on YouTube doing the podcast. If you can't catch it live, which you can ask questions in if you do, but if you can't, you can find it anywhere that you download your podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. And then the column itself, the written word, comes out on Monday mornings at 6 a.m. Every week at Fansided. It covers the whole league, so I hope people check it out.
There you go. And follow him on Twitter, like I and many others do, at Matt Verderame. Matt, as always, thank you, my brother. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week, my friend.
Hey, thanks a lot. Take it easy.
You got it. There you go, man. Matt Verderame. We step out of the huddle.